classes with people who are novices and just trying to, find the bathrooms and the whiteboards and stuff, It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. I think one thing that makes me think of, building on both Anthony and Suzanne's points, is that novice expert thing. The answer isn't to give them the expert framework, it's to figure out what's the intermediate steps and let it build it. Like, I've always heard, Anthony, that the best way to teach someone a new technology is to teach them something they have to do on it, so that it's a usable task and that they will use that for scaffolding to search for other things, for example. So thinking about what those intermediate scaffolds look like, I found this made me really think about that, and I found it really challenging to think what that would look like.
Yeah, and it might depend too on the domain, because I do think there is some support for making the experts framework explicit, so that it's a way to think about how you might organize the concepts that you're accumulating. So it's just an organizational framework, and it gives you a way to access that information, to retrieve it and use it as a way that more experienced people would. So I think there is a place to do that, but I think if it's a practice-based domain, that there are experiential, that when it's based on lots of accumulated experience, it may be too much of a leap. You know what I mean? So it's like, whether it's factual knowledge you're trying to organize, or whether it's experiential knowledge that you've got to build up over time, that may make some difference in how we think about the nature of the framework we give a novice. I don't know.
Speaking of frameworks, I'm not actually a teacher myself. I just do technology.
But you do teach. You teach.
But I'm just thinking about, frameworks. What do we mean when we say framework? Like, are we thinking about like how, for example, how content is organized in D2L? Is that what we mean by framework? I'm a little bit confused. I know the framework is basically the way that we're organizing the knowledge, right? But I'm just wondering, is that like a specific process that, others have outlined? Is there like frameworks for this and frameworks for that? Or is a framework something that a teacher like builds when they're determining how to present content to their students?
I think, at least the way I'm thinking about it, is what is the knowledge framework that the students has, and how do we as teachers consider that when implementing or when designing instructions, so what we're teaching is actually allowing the students to examine their own knowledge framework in their head. In a sense, it's a little bit like the D2L, but it's inside the student's head. Am I understanding your question correctly? I'm not sure I'm answering.
I think so. Sorry, I had a little bit of a weird question because I'm just trying to understand it myself. But my idea here, or what I think I got, was basically the students understand information in a way like this. They understand how this concept fits with this. So I think that the answer there is we have to build something else, something around that shows that student how this concept links to other things.
Mm-hmm. And Anthony,
everyone comes with a different framework. You have a student in your class who really wants you to use things visually because that's their framework.
But then we want to help them build other frameworks, right? I mean, that's the value added when we teach, is helping them elaborate and build multiple ways to access their knowledge.
Well, but that happens as a result. I was about to say that that's one student, but then there's the auditory student, and their framework is that they get everything you say. So one gets everything they see, one gets everything you say, and when they learn from each other and they work in groups and they collaborate, their frameworks automatically change.
Yeah, but I think we can be very intentional about the kinds of frameworks we want them to build, too.
Well, I think we do that in our planning, don't we?
Yeah.
We bring in things that are visual, we bring in the activity, we bring in the auditory. We present in all those different modalities. And so lots of things, as we teach, as our course happens, they change and develop.
Well, someone else was going to say something a minute ago. Who?
I was going to say something. I think it's not about the activity I think it's not about the moment to moment, but it's about, like, I'm thinking about how we think about as a program, particularly in something like education, how we give them a framework, for example, something about like assessment. And how do we start them off with, I think that they struggle to put the information together. I think it's one of the reasons why when we teach like over multiple courses, we think, gosh, we taught that in course 3 courses ago, like, or they learned it in, theories of teaching and learning. I think if they had a stronger, like some visual framework, like a map, almost like a map of how that organization, and then we help them link the different information. I feel like that's what the book's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's more explicit for them, so we're helping them, because if they were experts, so I don't remember who said it, maybe Suzanne, when you said there's all kinds of people in your classes. Well, in the case of the people in your classes that are more experts, those people are doing that knowledge integration much more autonomously. It's really the people that are more closer to the novices that need more of a way to organize that information, a framework, so that then they can pull out information. Does that, I don't know.
Yeah, I think, and I was thinking about what I gathered from the chapter and the research that I know is it's the functionality of the knowledge. So you want the framework to help them organize the new content that they're learning in a way that they're going to use it again. So it's in categories. It's in a category system that of hierarchical categories that'll help them retrieve that knowledge when it's useful. Because that's the problem, that when they learn in isolation, they don't know, and they can't access it when they encounter the problem in real life. So they may have the tools to solve the problem, but they don't realize the knowledge they have applies. So it's making sure the frameworks are functional, that helping students to organize their knowledge and skills in functional ways so that they can be able to access it and use it in more diverse contexts. I can think back to an example when I learned statistics as a college student in a very isolated way, so that later on, when I was taking courses that involved you making decisions about applying statistics or using that knowledge, I didn't know how to use that knowledge. So it wasn't connected to useful examples or problem types. I think that's one thing we want to avoid, is that sort of fragile, compartmentalized knowledge.
It's really interesting that you bring that up. That's something that I was thinking about before we started meeting today. Is my undergraduate degree is in adult training and development. And my program at the time was really more focused on like corporate training, like training people to do specific tasks. And throughout my entire program, there was absolutely no mention on, having students learn something and then be able to transfer that knowledge somewhere else. When you're thinking about like corporate training, you want your employees to be able to do one specific thing. That mechanic has to be able to fix, this certain system that your company uses. It doesn't really matter that they know how to fix other similar systems.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's funny that there's a whole nother a whole nother group of people out there that are also doing, building people's knowledge that don't care at all about knowledge transfer.
Yeah, that is interesting. And it's a really important thing for us to think about as in teacher preparation, because we can't prepare teachers for every kinds of scenario, but if we give them functional frameworks that help them understand classes of situations and principles, that's the principle-driven nature of knowledge organization that experts have, that they know how to use the knowledge that they have if a situation comes up that's similar to something they've learned about. where a strategy applies.
So I guess that applies to like this use, contrasting, and boundary cases. Just
Yeah.
like, just like,
Yes.
like as so you have a piece of knowledge here. Give them an idea of where that applies, where the extent of it applies. I guess there's probably a better way of saying that, where it applies and where it doesn't apply.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Interesting.
So where's our map? What have we got?
So we got. I've been the only one filling this out. I guess it's not too popular, or maybe do I
Well,
refresh? But
we
anyway.
were just letting you take the burden of I don't know about other people, but I can't do too many things at once.
I don't think it's letting us. I've clicked, but it doesn't let us.
Really?
Yeah, I was playing around with it and couldn't
No.
figure it out, so I
Nothing.
gave it up.
I'm clicking on the plus sign, and I've clicked on several things. But
Try refreshing your screen. Maybe I'll refresh
Okay.
mine as well. Oh, we tested this out before and it worked just fine.
Yeah, it did work before.
If I could make a suggestion, I think Padlet would work well for something like this, Anthony. Do you
Working for me.
Padlet?
Yeah, there's a lot of tools that I know would work well. We considered using, another tool like
I like CMAP tools the best.
CMAP
but-
tools and other XMind and other things like that. We went with MindMeister because it was an
Well,
option.
talking about frameworks, what I have my students do is to brainstorm on using Padlet, and then they're creating the concept map.
Mhm.
It looks like it did work. I didn't create this one, did I?
I did. That was me, Diane. So I see different links in the Zoom chat. I don't know if they look the same though.
Yeah, it's the same one. I just spammed it a couple of times. Okay, well, we'll think about, we'll maybe use a different technology next time. Or I wonder why that didn't work. Anyways, what do we have? What do we have?
Because it's hard to build the connections at the same time as getting out the big ideas. So just in terms of process, that's what I've learned anyway. Because I'm hesitant to say anything, so I'm like, well, how does that connect? And once it's on the screen with the lines, it's hard to move it. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Maybe that's just where my quirky brain thinks, but
Let's see, is it? I've never actually tried that. So if I grab it, can I move it up here? Yeah, I can. But then we don't want to get too far, and this is sort of just a brainstorming activity. And this was actually one of the strategies that the author suggested in the book is, having sort of like a build a mind map to analyze how your knowledge is different from your students. So we thought we'd try it out today.
And yeah, and I found that to be a really valuable process with faculty to unpack, especially we were talking earlier about, and I think it was Shanti that brought it up, how we forget what we know in relation to our students' experiences, and we make some assumptions. And I think starting a course by unpacking your own knowledge this way and your conceptual framework and and how concepts are organized within getting the big idea for your course might be a way to sort of unpack your expectations for students and think through what's realistic for them and what you want them to achieve.
You want to move on to the rest, Diane?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so that was just meant to be the opening activity, but we also have some more discussion questions that we forwarded out ahead of time, along with this nice PowerPoint. Give that 1 minute to open up here. There we go. So we developed our own concept map. This is a concept map that I think Dan put together ahead of time for us.
Yeah. Well, and this is the same framework that I keep using when I think about cognition and learning. And I wanted to keep seeing if we could build around it. And I think about it like a teeter-totter analogy in a way that the things that we can control are in the learning environment, but we're always needing to adjust those and design those in relation to what we imagine is in the learner's knowledge base and what we want them to grow and construct in their knowledge base. So in this, I revised the last month's concept map around this cognitive model with some new concepts that reflected this chapter. And I think the things that I took away that were of ways that we need to think intentionally about the learning environment and how we're structuring the academic tasks that we give the candidates, and that we are being intentional about the structure of the framework and what we're getting, how we want them to organize their knowledge. So the use of advanced organizers was talked about in the book, and concept mapping. And the thing that I began to think about that I hadn't thought about this way before is the way we design our courses in D2L. That D2L shell can really begin to make explicit a framework to students in the course in a way that, I hadn't really thought it through. And then, of course, that the aim is for those functional frameworks for students to be sort of getting exposure to and to be constructing their knowledge around functional frameworks that they can be able to access and use. And that's what I've got circled in their long-term memory, their knowledge base.
Diane, I have a request. I only see a very small part of your of the map. I don't know if can you reduce the size? Can everybody see the full map?
I can, so I'm not sure.
I think that's in personal Zoom.
What?
Yeah, but I see two big circles, two orange circles.
Those are highlighting the chapter concepts, Seema. So this map is something we talked about last month when we talked about prior knowledge as the sort of a model or a framework. It's a framework for thinking about the learning process and kind of trying to design the learning environment in connection to what we think we want students' knowledge to develop and what they bring with them. And the bottleneck is always working memory, right? That's what is the limited in capacity, and what makes that expand and contract, what makes students' thinking work better is the amount of prior knowledge they bring and how easily they can access it, but also how we design that learning environment, how we make the ideas accessible to students and help them sort of appropriate it and pay attention to it. And the other piece that's supporting that teeter-totter effect is the metacognition, how we trigger that, because students can create their own balance more effectively. If they're low on what they already know, they can work harder at sort of focusing their attention by using their own thinking about thinking strategies, and we can teach them those, and that's a later chapter in the book we're learning. But I think these three big ideas of the learning environment, metacognition, working memory or thinking, and long-term memory or their knowledge base are sort of like the key. We're always needing to keep them in balance, or that's what it comes down to in designing for learning is, and then there's sub-concepts with each of those that I think they're going to come up in the chapter, in the remaining chapters we read, but in this chapter, they were the ones that I circled in red that came up. I don't know if that makes sense.
I have a quick question. This is Un.
Yeah, hi, Un.
I totally agree with your concept map on the cognitive model of learning, and I'm just thinking about what about motivation?
Well, that's the next chapter, and what I imagine will be in there in the long-term knowledge base are goals. Students' goals and expectations are going to be some of those things that we need to sort of bring out and to understand what their goals and expectations are, because that has a lot to do with their motivation for a particular learning task, but it also, the organization of their knowledge does as well. And I want to keep us rooted in that notion. How students' knowledge is organized around the topic that you're trying to engage them is matters hugely as to whether you're going to engage them or not, because it's whether it's meaningful to them. So I think it goes back to what we talked about last month with the prior knowledge, figuring out how to trigger or access the frameworks that they do have. I think that, Seema talked a little bit about that, and Shanti and others, the frameworks they're bringing, that we want to sort of access those, but they're coming to a class to learn, right? So you don't want them to leave necessarily with the framework that they came with. We want to expand that. And in some cases, we want to upend it because it may be very limiting. It may turn them off to being open to some certain ideas. So, it's that teeter-totter effect, that of accessing what their knowledge base is, but then sort of building up the learning environment so to get their attention, to integrate some new knowledge. And that's where I think these tools like the MindMeister, the CMAP tools, advanced organizers, getting how students are organizing their knowledge out. Here we listed a few in the PowerPoint. And I put in there, which I think is a little, not how we're always thinking about it, and this may bear some more debate and discussion, but I recently finished the reviewers QM course training, and I was struck by how the certain standards in QM, particularly the alignment standards, can really help make explicit the framework we want students to become aware of and to be organizing their knowledge around in a course. And I think LITS has done a nice job of helping us to meet that alignment standard with their course map tool when we're planning for our course in D2L. So I wanted to put that out as a tool that we can use to really be intentional about the functional frameworks that we want students to sort of be organizing their content knowledge that they're acquiring the course around, or their skills.
Is everyone here familiar with what Quality Matters is? Have you all had a chance to take a look at the rubric ever in the past? Or have you built a course aligned with the standards?
Yes.
Pretty much yes?
Yes. Has everyone gone through? Is that what you're asking, Anthony? The Quality Matters?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
I have.
It might be helpful to put the rubric in the D2L course here.
Actually, we'd love to do that, except the Quality Matters licensing agreement says that everyone that wants to see the rubric has to create a Quality Matter account. And you can download a abridged version of the rubric. The abridged version of the rubric doesn't have any of like the annotations that go along with the full version.
And I think, the big rubric is more than we're talking about here. I think I was struck by just the idea that the learning outcomes are aligned by these standards that we highlighted here, 2.1, 2.2, are all the alignment standards where you're aligning your program learning outcomes to your course learning outcomes, to your module level outcomes, to the assessments, to the activities, to the materials and the tools. So there's this coherence that's created. You try to create this coherence between these sets of things. I think it's the next slide, Anthony, isn't it, that shows the course map? Oh yeah, here, this is the part I thought was, the QM standards in my head align with this research in this chapter, particularly the alignment ones, because I think this is what creates a foundation for learning in the course. And I don't know that we always think about it that way, of making explicit the functional frameworks that we want students to leave the course with. They're, like we often just have module 1, module 2, module 3 and we don't have a name by it or an idea that might trigger a meaningful connection, because it's about connections, I think. So I just wanted to offer this out as.
I really like how the QM courses, if you're familiar with the standards, you know that the QM standards and how QM courses are meant to be built are very well aligned, as Diane said, with the concepts in this chapter. Like, for example, I think a lot of you have seen some of the QM passable courses that we have here at National Louis. Actually, I have one that I just want to show you real fast. Maybe it'll show my point here. Let me back out of this real fast. There we go. And I actually have it open right here. So this is an early childhood education course that we have. And I think this course really shows, how powerful QM is and how QM is sort of embedded in the research that's out there and really helps us to develop courses that are not only aligned properly and have objectives which support have assignments and have learning activities which support all of the objectives. But just for example, going in here, one of the suggestions in the chapter is that you explicitly state what the learner is going to learn. You give them some sort of an advanced organizer to help them understand how they're going to learn. And like I said, I think a lot of you have seen this before, but what we always try to do is go into one of these modules here. And for example, we have like a module objectives page. So basically here we're telling them, you know, what are they going to learn? So here is the learning objective. Here is what you're going to learn. The next page is an activities page. So we tell them what you're going to learn. Then we tell them how you're going to learn it. And then we get into the content and we tell them, you know, and we start going over all the different content. We give them activities which are aligned to those content and to those objectives, etc. And so this is what we came to when we were thinking about, you know, how do we build a Quality Matters course.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, that was just me bringing up this one course here. And then of course, you know, we have, when you're building a course, we have like a course map tool that I think that some of you may have seen before that helps instructional designers and subject matter experts make sure that they're covering all the objectives in their course and that their materials and their assessments and their activities actually line up with each other so that, you know, you're teaching, you're assessing what you're teaching and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes, hi, this is Ann Kenneman. I'm sorry, I was just on the phone, not on the Zoom, because I had another meeting. But it kind of goes back to what Diane said before. I think she may have said something like how students organize knowledge influences how they learn and apply what they know.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of aligns with how then we as instructional designers organize the knowledge influences how our students learn and apply what they know. And so I think, look, you know, finding that thread or thinking about that thread in the design
Mm-hmm.
of the course really has a positive impact on the outcome, where Diane said the students are see those, the more they see those connections,
Mm-hmm.
irrespective of their the type of students that they are. You know, we have all different kinds of students with, you know, different learning styles, whatever. Irrespective of that, the more they see those connections, the deeper the learning for them.
Yeah, can you think of examples of how you've seen that work for you, Anne, in your own experience? And when you
Well, right. Well, in pretty much all my courses, I give just a short just survey asking the students, kind of a metacognition survey.
Mhm.
You know, how do you learn best? Give me some examples. It's very, very short, whether it's in my D2L or face-to-face. And so then I have an idea or just a window into their thinking. And then as I go through the course, you know, either if it's online, you know, it's very easy to see what kinds of questions they're asking, how they're discussing. Are they only discussing with one or two other students? Are they discussing with the whole class? Then what I can see if I were to really, you know, map it all out, how because of the way that I'm organizing the knowledge for them, that all the students in the class seem to be moving in a direction where it's the learning part.
Mhm.
You know, of course, you know, when there's frustration, then I'll, you know, find out, you know, for where's the reason for the frustration, and sometimes, you know, they'll say it's the way that they're thinking. But what I find if you do this really well is, besides just learning the content, they're learning them about themselves as students and thinkers, and that metacognition piece.
Yeah, that makes sense. And
It's very
that's
powerful.
Mhm.
Okay.
Go ahead. Someone was wanting to say something. Go ahead,
I
Anne.
was just going to continue with what was saying about motivation, because I know that's the next step, but the motivation determines and sustains what they do,
Mhm.
you know, and what they do to learn, you know. So it kind of is the next step. So sorry,
Right,
getting
but
ahead.
but meaning is probably one of the most powerful motivators. You know, I think so making the frameworks and the way we want students to organize their knowledge meaningful to real world connections for them, I think is pretty powerful motivationally. So
Yeah, and I never really, I'm sorry to interrupt, I never really thought about it, just like you said, students organize knowledge influences how they learn and apply what they know. I never, it was probably out there, but just thinking of it that way made me think just a little bit more intentionally about what I do, with my students, whatever modality I'm teaching.
Yeah, and I think that the way that this has been uncovered or studied over the years, probably for more than 20 years, is through that expert novice research that was referred to in the chapter. I've just always been fascinated by that line of research. I did my dissertation using that methodology, and what I was struck by that in my own research was that how novices didn't even see the same things in the problem that an expert saw. So in the work that I did, I gave scenarios. So they were classroom scenarios to psychologists to sort of problem solve out loud and how they would go about problem solving and consulting. And novices just saw the topography of the child's behavior, whereas an expert not only saw the topology of the child's behavior, what was going on with the child, but heard the teacher's voice, heard what the teacher was saying about the students. So they saw much more in the problem scenario. And that's a technique you can use with your students. If you have scenarios or problem types that you can give them and have them sort those into categories or think aloud about what they're seeing, you can get access to how they're organizing their knowledge and the categories that they're using to sort of parse out reality. And that's what we need to know in order to sort of build those frameworks for them, is how they're...
Another just short piece, because I never really thought about the students' prior knowledge can help or hinder learning. Yeah. And it's so true in teaching, right? When they come and they've got a robust, prior knowledge, they're right with you. But then either if it's not, it's insufficient for the task or whatever, then they hold back. And then, what do you do about that piece, especially as it relates to you teach as you were taught, those kinds of things. So that's just another piece that I was thinking about.
Yeah.
How do you feel about when students already know the things that you're going to teach? So, for example, you have a class and you have, a couple students who are already very familiar with a topic. Like, for example, today, I know a lot of people here have used concept mapping and mind mapping tools. So I didn't really want to spend too long showing you the features of one particular program, for example. But do you feel like that throws you off as a teacher as you're teaching, or do you think it disrupts the class in any way, or do you think that's a benefit for the learners to have people in the class that already know those things?
Well, I think it does both, actually. I have some right now, some MEd students in my SPE 572, and it throws me off because I feel like I'm not differentiating enough for them because they already have their classrooms, they've already done this. And then the others are just learning lesson planning kind of for the first time. And they can learn, but they might also get the wrong impression or information from, the teachers in the field, because we are teaching lesson planning more explicitly and how, methodologies more explicitly. So it can really be a challenge. I wonder, even as I went out of class last week, I wonder if it's even the right place to have them there, because they're not really getting what they deserve. There are 3 of them.
That's a good question. So you want to move on to the next slide, Anthony, with the...
Yeah, so here we go.
Just to wrap up this QM reference that we were making to, I think it's a way to think about, I don't know how many of you encountered the course mapping tool that LITS uses. This is, I think I left one column out, but this is essentially a tool they're asking faculty who are subject matter experts for either designing online or blended courses to take, to fill out prior to the instructional design part. And I just think this is an opportunity to sort of think about what frameworks that our student, how we're making explicit frameworks that we want our students to take away from the course that are going to help them to organize their experience, organize the content, and be able to use it and transfer it to new situations. And I think, you know, presumably some of those big ideas should be in our learning outcomes for the program. And then at the course level, they're a little more specific, right? And they're more specific frameworks we're wanting to make explicit to them. And at the module level, they're even more specific, but those should be connected so that creates a nice conceptual framework for the student, from more abstract to more specific ideas that they're going to take away from the course. And the more we can work on these together as teams, I think the more powerful the frameworks will be that when our students leave the program. There'll be more coherence and connectivity between the various courses they experienced, if those courses all interacted with the program learning outcomes, connected to them, and there's some connections across the module outcomes and course outcomes. So it's an opportunity with thinking together about these functional frameworks that we want to help our students construct and use.
Diane, can you explain what's the difference between the first table on increasing specificity and how in evidence and learning you have module learning outcomes in both?
Right. So this is the abbreviated version of the course map that LITS provides. And the first on the left are just outcomes, right? Program, course, and then module. And so you have an opportunity to sort of think through the frameworks from very more abstract, likely at the program level, to more specific. As you get down into specific content of a module within a course. So that's an opportunity to think through those frameworks. But then within the course, you then think about how are students going to use that knowledge? How are you going to make that knowledge accessible to students, and how are you going to ask them to use it? The learning assessments should be their use of the knowledge, right? So you're designing assessments that require them to use that knowledge. And the more authentic the use is, the more like how you want them to use it in the real world, or when they move into their professional contexts, or the problem scenarios that we want to be able to, they want to use that knowledge in the, so it's an alignment process, and one that I think is an opportunity to think carefully together as program teams about the frameworks that we're using and how we want students to organize their knowledge. So it's a tool. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I need to have examples.
It's a planning tool. Well, Anthony, we had an example, but we were a little bit worried about showing it. I think it was another early childhood example we had.
Yeah, I can bring that up. Do you want me to show you real fast?
Yeah, and I'm surprised you had to do this, Shani. You did one of these.
I know, and I'm trying to remember.
But here's an example
how I did it, and what's the difference between the module outcome in the first table and the module outcomes in the second table.
No, there's no difference. There's no difference. They're the same. They're the same, but they're just restated. But in the context of what's the content going to be and what are the assessments going to be.
Okay.
So I just couldn't get it all on one.
Okay.
So here's an actual course map that we have, and let me just show you kind of what we have here. So up here at the very top, we have the learning objectives, or the course level learning objectives. So these are the things that the students are going to be able to do after they pass the course. So these are those broad...
No one be able to, right.
Sorry? So these are those...
No, I just said no one be able to do. I'm sorry, Anthony.
Yeah, not a problem. So these are those broad objectives, and you can see that, they're addressed multiple times throughout the course. So this one objective right here is addressed in module 2, 3, 4, etc. So those are those broad level objectives. Then we get more specific down here. So previously, like on the slide, they're to the left and to the right. There's two different tables. Here, we're just scrolling down instead. So once you have the course level objectives in mind, those course level objectives then align with module level objectives, which is just further breaking down. So in order to be able to complete those course level objectives, they need to be able to also do these module level learning objectives. So it's kind of like you're building it from the bottom up there. Again, we can see those module level objectives, they're written properly. They're written according to, Bloom's taxonomy. They have an action verb. They're in a specific domain. These are the course level objectives that this module module level objective aligns with. And then we have learning content here, which are the things that the students are going to learn from. So after working with this material here, they should have an idea about how to meet this module level learning objective. And then right next to that, we have an assessment. So we're assessing what we're teaching. So we can all see that in one row right here, everything is aligned. So that's just what an actual course map looks like. And I think this is a particularly well done one. We actually have links to like external resources and things like that.
Do you give that to the students?
Right now, no.
No, this is used for just planning for the design of the course, but to me, it's an opportunity, and I think we could be more explicit in those course maps of the conceptual frameworks. Right. So it isn't so procedural. Right now, I think we think of it as very procedural in getting these alignments done, but there could be key words there that help us make it very, more of a conceptual framework from the program down to the way we want students to use their knowledge.
I hate to ask a stupid question, but where would this be housed, or where could I find this?
Well, we'll put it in the D2L course that we've got for this experience. There's I think you're already registered, Suzanne, so you can get all the materials that we have will be there.
Thank you so much.
Quick announcement. I've been getting a whole bunch of private messages. Sorry, I can't respond to them all. I'm trying to think about this right now. I'll try to get back to you via email afterward, okay?
So if we got one more example, I wanted to, did we?
Quickly, I was thinking about this prior slide here. So actually, I'm going to go back one. If you're thinking about like going back to like corporate learning, specifically like technology, that's my experience. I have a CompTIA A+ computer technician certification. That's not actually what it's called, but that's what it is. I'm a certified computer technician. And in order to get that certification, I had to meet specific standards. And I think it's really interesting the way they do that. And I don't see it really modeled the same way in like actual academia or around here. Basically what they do is they have institutions out there that the industry says, yeah, this is an institution that grants certifications, and those certifications mean that this person knows how to do a particular job. So in this case, that company is called CompTIA, and they offer the certification. So what they did is they created a whole list of standards that people who get the certification need to meet those standards. And then basically what they did is they said, they just released those standards to the market. And then the market, other companies like lynda.com, for example, is the one that I used. They created training courses specifically built to meet those standards. And it's really interesting the way they do that, because they actually have a video for every specific standard, and they make it very explicit. It's in the name, what standard that video addresses. It's in the title. They talk about it several times. They give several examples about how their video will help you meet that standard throughout the video. And we don't do that same level of alignment here. We do the course map, for example, but we don't give, right now at least, we don't give that course map to the students. We do the overview and activities page, but that at the same time, it doesn't link like every single assignment to a standard like the way they do in those, video-based training. And I'm just thinking, around in this group at least, do you think that the way we do it right now is sufficient? Or do you think we need to make more of an effort to, show that alignment in courses?
Well, in the UCOs, don't we align?
Yeah, we do. We do that in the course map and the UCOs, but I'm talking about like to the students. Like, for example, we have a lot of assignments that, it doesn't specifically state, after completing this assignment, you should be able to meet these standards.
I think we should be explicit, especially if the outcomes are important. We've got outcomes representing the big ideas in the field or the domain that we want them to develop expertise in. I think we should be explicit about why they're doing what they're doing and how what they're doing is going to help them really achieve that understanding or that skill with it, because that builds their awareness. So it builds that metacognitive piece. If we don't tell them this is this is why you're doing this, and it's going to help you achieve X, Y, or Z, they may not automatically see it. And then it's a missed opportunity to help them make a connection. And connections are the things that really build that knowledge base. Connections are the things that, you know, help them build memory for experiences. So that would.
Absolutely. So, and
I agree.
it's all really important, especially like in a QM review. I mean, if you don't show alignment in your courses to a certain level, you just fail the QM review outright. They won't pass it. So that's something definitely to think about.
And yeah, I want to share this last representation because this is something we've been working on, a faculty team with the Adaptive Cycles of Teaching and NCE. And it's been something we've been making explicit to ourselves as a faculty team, and this is just the literacy instruction frameworks. And there's actually one more, but I think we started in thinking about the core practices that we identified for the teacher candidates to learn around being these 5 things we wanted to focus on for balanced literacy instruction. And that was a very simple map, but it was a huge step for the faculty that were involved to sort of make this commitment that these were the practices we were going to focus on across a set of courses, 3 or 4 courses. But then as the team taught it, they evolved the conceptual framework in a more functional way. So the concept map on the right is a representation that after a year of implementation, the faculty revised the simple map to make more explicit the relationships between those core practices and the literacy learning environment being sort of the first thing that we wanted students to think about, and there were aspects of that. And then instructional discourse began to be this big core practice in and of itself that's now stretching across other domains. But that was important to all 4 or 5 of those literacy practices, and that they enacted all those literacy practices at the bottom of the map in the same way. By first explicit instruction, then guided practice, and independent practice. So these 2 maps we're now sharing with students in the program so that they get a sense of where they're going. They get the simple map in the beginning. Oh, I'm going to learn how to enact these 5 practices. And then as they get into it, they see this more complex map as they're learning how to enact a lesson cycle with explicit instruction, guided practice, and independent practice. So it's been an interesting way to work with integrating a faculty team around a shared conceptual framework across a set of courses, and then starting to share that explicitly with candidates who are learning the material and learning how to enact it. It's been powerful. So I'd hope that Ruth would be, I think she had to sign off, but Ruth's and Sophie Degner have been involved with the design of these and implementation and sharing with students.
So this is for a program?
Yeah, this is for elementary ed teacher training program in the undergraduate classes. Have been using concept mapping a lot, asking students to develop concept maps as they are around reading, and then we're also practicing concept mapping within the faculty team to sort of unpack practices with each other to sort of get a sense of what some of our own assumptions are, and
Diane, is it part of the ACT?
Yes, this is part of the literacy core practices in the Adaptive Cycles of Teaching model.
So there is a great deal of interaction and mentoring and kind of supporting students and evaluating their knowledge development, etc., right?
Well, yeah, I think there is in all programs, but yeah. But
Okay, everyone. We are about 1 minute over right now. Does anyone have any final questions, comments before we wrap up?
Diane, if we were interested in working with you on doing something like this for our program, could we do that?
I would love to. I was hoping someone would ask. I love to work with concept maps. I think they're just a lot of fun to do, and it's a great way to sort of collaborate with a team of faculty around a set of ideas that you want to sort of think through together. I'd love to.
Okay.
Because I've been using an Excel file to try to map out across a 3-year span of time, and it's just not able to fit everything that's needed.
Well, let's make a date, Tiffany. I'd love to.
Okay. Thanks.
Excellent. So as a reminder, we'll get all of this posted, including, the PowerPoint and the recording of the session in our D2L shell. There's also a discussion thread in case you have any ideas that you weren't able to share today or that come up later on. Any questions, go ahead and post in that. Diane and I will be monitoring that and we'll be responding periodically.
And let's not forget, we'll post a course map there too, a blank course map as another tool. And these are all just tools.
When are we meeting next?
It's the third
Tuesday
of November. So,
15.
and it's the motivation chapter 3. So we'll send out, I think that was a good suggestion we got. We'll send out some questions as it gets closer as a reminder. That might be some good discussion questions. But if you have feedback, suggestions, we'd appreciate it. Anthony will make a link available. So we do try to use your feedback. So please let us know.
Thank you very much. Really interesting. Really.
Thanks so much. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
everyone. Hey, Angela. Thanks for the idea. Yeah, I don't work with concept maps all that often, so it's a new experience for me working with concept maps. I know how to create one and everything, but I think as working with Diane, she's on a whole nother level than I am in terms of concept mapping. So.
Yeah, well, I teach one of the cognition and learning course, and Diane designed that, and it's all around concept maps. So I've learned through having students be like, I don't know what to do, and people are hesitant to put connections because they have to be revised. So for brainstorming, it works really well just to get all of those ideas down, and then connect them. So
that's kind of what I was hoping to do with those words, that I had, the key ideas, but maybe that wasn't done the best way. I kind of had that idea with when I was thinking about using CMap tools, which we could have done with this one. It's just a little bit easier using CMap tools to get things down on the paper, or on the screen. But then I wanted to do the group. The CMap tools doesn't have the group function very easily, so MindMeister had that functionality. So
yeah, right. My suggestion is that would be a second step. The first step is really just get all the ideas down, because in brainstorming, any small impediment can just stop the process. So I've seen that in my classes too, where it's oh, let's make a concept map, and it's okay, where is everybody? So
yeah,
let me see if I can. Oh, I think Anne's trying to call in. It's just a second.
Okay.
Hello. Good. How are you? Yes.